Hey, everybody, welcome to our Collegiate eSports panel. This is going to mostly focus on how getting started, how to get into the collegiate esports scene. I decided to bring a lot of people in who are on the varsity side as well as the student organization side. I guess we could just go right down the list for introductions. My name is Joseph Rudy. I usually just go by Rudy. I am currently the director and head coach at Coker College down in South Carolina. And we currently have the games of League of Legends eSports, or League of Legends Overwatch and Hearthstone. And we're working on adding a few more games in the future as well. But Dylan, if you want to go next.
Yeah. My name's Dylan Beal. I used to run Penn State eSports. Currently, right now, I just do local DC eSport events, as well as content creation on Twitch and podcasts.
This is good enough. Dr. Joey Gariziak, and I work at Shenandoah University. I'm the director of esports there, as well as an associate professor of sport management and our new esports major, our new esports academic program that will be starting next fall, in which we're currently recruiting students and other faculty for. And so I started the program there this year as well with some student help. And I'm also a member of the Press Start radio show in Winchester, Virginia. We broadcast on ESPN Radio out of Hagerstown, as well as on Bob Rock's radio. And I guess that's it. Yeah, go ahead.
And then I work with Joey at Shenandoah University as the Overwatch coach for our varsity team there. I'm also a co-host on the Press Start radio show. He already told you about that. He already told you about our program. There you go.
So the main thing about this panel is how we got started in esports. So if you want to start down the line, Joel, what was your first introduction in the collegiate esports scene? How did you get started?
It's a collegiate esports. So I began in esports when we were talking outside in Halo 1. Joey and I actually were in college together just playing for fun. We went to a LAN tournament, because that's all there was, in Nashville. And then this year, with the start of the program at Shenandoah, living in the area, Joey knew that I was interested in that world and was playing some Overwatch on my own, and was with the beginning of a program, just looking for any help. And so he brought me on board to our team here. So there you go.
Closer. Mine was similar to Joel's because, like he said, we played Halo, the original Combat Evolved, which was fantastic, in our dorm rooms at University of Georgia, with our wires running all through our dorms, and it was a travesty when somebody would trip over those things in the middle of blood cold, capture the flag. 2 hours into a match, somebody trips over it and the thing just crashes. It was awful. So that was our first introduction to esports, and it was fun. We had a great time doing it, and then went and got my PhD. It was all about sports, not really video games. Video games were just fun kind of thing on the side. And then later on, I was really, if I were to put two things I really like, which is sports and video games together, esports is what you get. And so I put those things together, and I realized that I can make this my research for the rest of my life. And so I've been researching it, writing articles, books, textbooks, other kinds of books, talking on radio shows, podcasts, international trips to talk to people about esports. So that really turned me into the academic side of things. And then at Shenandoah, with some student interest that we had there, they said, let's start an esports team. I said, sure, let's do it. Let's get going on things. And so, that kind of helped sell to administration that students care about esports. They like playing esports. They like the community that is esports and competitive gaming. And so that really got us started in the program, and that just started last spring, went into the summer, and we've begun competing this fall. But my introduction to it was very early, and then it was like a 10-year hiatus from competitive gaming until I really got back into it. And 10 years in esports is like a lifetime in other things.
So I got my start in StarCraft 2. I mostly just played at home. I was kind of like an online warrior, so to speak, and I spent most of my time just watching MLG tournaments online, and rest in peace StarCraft 2 MLG. But I went to Penn State University, and as a freshman, I went into our involvement fair just looking for StarCraft. I wanted to play with people so bad, and I saw they had a booth, and I talked with them, and it put stars in my eyes. I really fell in love with it, and I showed up to my first meeting, and I always tell the story because I walked in there and I saw 50 people who also love StarCraft 2, and for me, someone who was just playing online all the time, it Oh, it was so much. It was so great to like walk in somewhere and see people who love the same thing you do. And I kind of just fell in love with collegiate esports then. And I was really into StarCraft 2, but I was awful at it. And so if you like love something and you're really not good at it, I guess just coach. So I kind of became the coach and coordinator for StarCraft 2.
Yeah.
And so I kind of stepped up into that leadership role, and it was a big thing for me because I was extremely, extremely shy in high school, and that was kind of like my coming out of my shell moment, and it was really great, and I really loved it, and I kind of wanted to empower others to do that, and so I just like stuck with the club, and eventually I went on to be this guy's vice president, and then on to president once he graduated, and that was kind of the short of my story.
Yeah, and like Dylan said, I was also a president at Penn State. My introduction was with League of Legends, though, not StarCraft. It was just one of my friends was randomly playing one day, and I decided to try it out myself. Tried playing with the trackpad. It was impossible. Bought a mouse the next day and was playing with that. And it went from me playing on a very crappy laptop, trying for the first time ever, to building my own PC for the first time. I competed in my first tournament my freshman year, got a bunch of friends together. We were fresh 30s in League of Legends, so we were just starting to play ranked. We weren't even ranked yet, but we were like, we're going to play in this tournament. It'll be fun. Those other players who play like us. Quick 0-2, we got destroyed, but playing in front of a live crowd, hearing the casters cast your plays, it got me hooked immediately. I was at Penn State for about 5.5 years. I was switching majors, delayed my graduation quite a bit, but I learned so much at the Penn State Esports Club. If it wasn't for that club, I wouldn't have this job right now where I get to create a varsity esports program. And that's one thing I do kind of want to toss down to the two people at the end there, being a varsity esports program. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you get started in that? Like, how did that become a thing for you guys? Because I'm assuming you guys are on two different spectrums. One's coming in as a coach, and one was, were you a professor at the college beforehand?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you want to talk about like how that started out.
Geez, sure.
At least the spark notes of it.
Yeah, getting started on the collegiate scene with esports has not been always easy. I was telling you guys earlier that it started. I've always liked video games. Always been a big fan of it. I've been at MAGFest. This is I think my 4th or 5th year doing this. So I've always loved video games, but then my other life has always been in sports, where that was kind of more accepted. And studying esports, studying video games at the collegiate level hasn't always been accepted. Still not accepted at a lot of places. And so that was kind of a hard sell I had to make to some upper administration and other faculty members. But luckily at Shenandoah, it wasn't hard to get our president on board, because she recognized that this technology boom that we're in, this craze that we're in, there's something about that. And so to get started there, when she says, let's make it happen, it happens. So we've got this great virtual reality program, and our Shenandoah Center for Immersive Learning is a great program. They're making a lot of 360 videos, VR videos, doing a lot of projects there. So we're really on the cusp of a lot of technology anyway. And so adding esports to that, when she said, yes, it's good, I see it actually is legitimate. It took her 3 years to realize it's legitimate. But when she realized that, it was easier to make it happen. That really opened a lot of doors for us. And so from the professor side of things, when you talk about my research is in esports, like that's not a thing you can research. When actually it is, and you can, there's a niche there that a lot of people aren't studying right now or researching or writing papers about. And it's a field that's definitely growing. More and more schools are starting to realize that this is something we need to teach our students how to work in, on the business side of it, on the media side of it, on the technology side of it. This is a legitimate thing that's out there, and it's in more and more schools, and we're seeing it pop up in more and more places. And so from the professor side of things, to get it started, I've always had that itch. The students finally, I got some great students in that said they wanted to make it happen, so that really helped. And that was kind of a perfect melody right there. When the students say they want it to happen, professor's on board with it, and then the president of the university is also on board, that's when things happen. Sometimes it takes selling it to a board of trustees member or other upper administrative people to get the funding for it, so they know what it is. Because a lot of times, it's just they don't know. It's ignorance, that's not a bad thing. They just literally don't know. I'm ignorant to a lot of things out there. You have me go change the oil in my car. There's no way I can change the oil in my car. I'm very ignorant to things like that. So they're just ignorant to what esports is in this place that we have for college students and other people in our society. But once that perfect marriage of students, faculty, and upper administration got on board together, that's how it really started. And the president said, if we're going to do this, let's go all in. Let's be a varsity level program. Let's compete at the highest level we can. And so that's why we wanted to be members of NACE and Coker College, also members of NACE. And so we're one of two of like 90 schools, something like that, 90, 95.
I think it broke 100.
Is it break
not too
100
long
now?
ago, yeah.
I've stopped paying attention. And so members of NACE, which is the National Association of Collegiate eSports, which is considered one of the only varsity level governing bodies for esports for colleges. And so that's what we decided. If we're going to do this, let's do it right. Let's dive into it. Let's get students in here. Let's recruit for these programs. Let's create this new major. Let's have some virtual reality in there as well. So it's all these things where we're not just going to dip our toes in a little bit. We're going to go full board into this and see if we make it work. So that's really been a lot of fun. It's been chaotic, but it's been a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot to add here because I wasn't really that part of this, like getting people to buy in on it. These were conversations happening last spring and through the summer as this program began. I joined really sort of the beginning of the fall semester this year. Myself and a few other coaches and members of the community have come forward in a volunteer capacity to begin with. And I think that you were saying this harmony of students and their desire to see this happen with faculty on board, and then getting the president on board with this as well. And then you throw on top of this other people in the community, the radio show folks, our community director, outreach director, that kind of stuff, people that are willing to spend time because they recognize this is going to be something. And so when you have this extra layer just of interest, and at the beginning especially, trying to build a program, if you can find anybody willing to just spend some time on it, that adds legitimacy to it, and it adds that extra layer of, legitimacy, especially to the president and upper administration, for them to see, wow, so yes, students involved, the community is involved now too, so this is something for them much more easily for them to buy into.
Yeah, and I think Joel made a really good point there of like, most people's beginnings are fairly humble in the esports scene, especially collegiate, where it is a lot of volunteering. Because I probably did volunteering in the esports scene probably for maybe around 5 years before I finally was able to find a job, and that's just because of how new the esports scene was. One of my first things was, while at Penn State, I volunteered a lot to do casting for the tournaments. I would do tournament organizing, and it was just something where it wasn't a paid gig. You had to do it just for the passion of esports. And I think that's why you saw esports grow across the country, especially in colleges, just because there was a lot of passion in there. Because going through my time at Penn State, I would just find as many games as I can, cast them. If I saw that there was a lot of Big Ten schools that had a match against them, make sure to cast those. And it was just a lot of fun, got to know a lot of people. And after organizing so many tournaments, working with a lot of other organizations such as TESPA or NACE, then you get those people that you get in contact with, and you're able to grow from there. So I'm sure Dylan has a very similar experience of a lot of stuff in the collegiate scene with volunteering and basically a resume builder in that way.
Yeah, so basically whenever you're coming up in esports, a lot of it is just passion projects. And you'll be doing that basically from as soon as you start getting into collegiate esports, and even if you just want to break into esports and you're beyond college, because there's a lot of programs still being built. So like you all, I know you are getting programs for esports to actually get a degree in it, and that's really good, and it builds that pathway. But there's still a lot of schools out there that don't have that pathway yet, so you kind of have to build your path as you're going along. So like if you want to get into like marketing for any of the teams, like getting a marketing degree is really great. But if you're at a school that doesn't have like an esports program, you have to kind of go out there and get that experience in esports and bring it into it and build your own path.
Yeah, it's something like if you're at a college, you don't even have to be like a president and vice president in order to do well. There's a lot of people who like, they're just a social media manager. And you see that even stuff at RMU, who was the first varsity esports team out there. They have a lot of students helping them out, be it marketing, be it coaching. There's a lot of ways to get your foot in the door. And we have somebody at Penn State who was Paul the vice president last year?
He was a treasurer.
Treasurer,
yeah.
And he was working with the Philadelphia Fusion with, I think he's an intern for marketing. So there's a lot of different opportunities out there for a program. So you could be a player, you could work in social media, you could work with tournament organizing, stream. There's a bunch of different things you could do to get your foot in the door. And And one thing for Shenandoah, you guys have just recently started. This is your first year.
Yeah.
Are you working with your students to do similar things like that and having them get experience?
So yeah, I mean, I always encourage my students to take some initiative. I've got like some students sitting right here. I'm yelling at right now. Take some initiative. Yeah, you've done okay. To take their initiative and, you know, go out and do the things that you were talking about. You've got to put the hours in. You've got to, you know, you take the lead on a project, because that's a huge like resume builder and huge experience for the future. And you're looking for actual jobs, because you have to get those at some point. When you're trying to do that, trying to take it on your own and run a tournament on your own, volunteer to do the social media, do the marketing, go out into the community and find some partners in the community to bring some resources in, develop those partnerships, go to other schools, go to high schools, recruit students, talk about it. You know, all those things go into what you can do to get involved at the college level that will help you propel you for the future to work in the quote unquote real world. Because esports are in the real world now. There are real-time jobs popping up all over the place. Even if it's not for something like the Philadelphia Fusion, there's a guy I've done some panels with who now works, I think he's for Geico now, as their esports marketing manager. And so these traditional companies are looking for marketing managers to run their esports side of things, because all these major companies recognize the value in what esports can offer and the audience that it can reach that, you know, other areas can't reach that audience, which is this audience here, and it's a lot of buying power in that audience. So just going out there, taking the initiative, doing things on your own. You know, I always encourage students, whether it's esports or sport management or marketing, whatever it is, you know, do things beyond the classroom. You know, companies don't care that you got a B+ in marketing. They care that you actually understand marketing and can run a marketing campaign when you get done. The really practical things, the experiential learning. And so even going into our degree that's starting next year, a lot of that is built in. There's one class in esports event management where we're going to run multiple events throughout the semester, small scale and large scale, some individual, some team-based events. So students get all that experience running events, and they can put that on a resume and talk about it in a job interview about how they ran the event. What were the good things that happened? What were the bad things? What did they learn? What would they do different next time? Because now they've got experience where somebody else that is also applying for that job has never run an event, so they can't talk about that experience. So there's no substitute for experience, and volunteering your time is huge, and just doing it whenever you can.
Just a little bit to add there. You might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not on. Thank you. From this academic side of things, but you know, I'm a volunteer, so like I've got a full-time job that is not in esports, right? And it's actually in finding jobs for people. So a little bit, I guess it does apply a little bit here. So there are a handful of varsity programs out there, but the majority of the collegiate esports are still just student-run, right? And so if there are students in here and you're like you're considering a career in esports and you can't come to Shenandoah University because there aren't many other options at the moment where you can get a degree, well, you know what? No one else has a degree in esports yet, and nobody. These companies are hiring people out of other industries with other areas of expertise, and so really at the moment, like volunteering, or at least starting just by giving your time, these passion projects, that is going to be your foot in the door. That is if you don't come to Shenandoah University. And so, but like esports, this is an industry that, although is quite large already, is still, you know, just an eyelash of what it's going to be 10 years from now. So we're like in the very, very beginnings, where there are going to be organizations that are going to come and go, and just like think about the beginnings of what other professional sports that were out there, and how you know, maybe like sports management majors when that first came on board was probably laughed at, or you know, there's the ignorance about what do we need this for. So that was a little bit rambling, but I hope I made some sort of point.
No, you're definitely right with where experience is a lot more important than what degree you have. Like, I graduated with a mathematics degree, and I can tell you I haven't used that a single time yet. But what helped me out was that during my time at Penn State, I made sure to keep a catalog of every tournament I organized, every organization that I helped with, be it casting, be it analytic work for their teams. I made sure to hold on to them, and then I had a nice PowerPoint presentation that I would give to my employers that I was looking at, and it really helped me land this job. So it's one of those things that right now it's just experience is the number one thing. If it's finding it through your collegiate club, your varsity program, or just an amateur league you want to do, there's a lot of people out there. There is a college student who created the Upsurge Amateur League right now, which in League of Legends is one of the top amateur leagues. They have a lot of teams in there that are on the path to pro. And this was started as a passion project back when I believe it was in high school. So you got to find what you like. If it's tournament organizing, if it's marketing, if it's analytic work, just go out there and try to find experience in it somewhere.
Yeah, and it can be kind of anything. So if you just want to like be a photographer, for instance, and just go out to events and just take photographs, and at the end just try to find one of the event organizers and just say, hey, I took all these photographs for you guys, and then maybe next time around they'll like call you and ask you to actually do photography for the event. I know one way to get experience is just by doing the thing. So I think it's San Francisco Shock, the Overwatch League team. One of the people that they hired for their social media was someone who was just posting memes. They were just making memes about San Francisco Shock and posting it, and everyone loved it, and so they were like, oh, well, why don't you just come on board? So it could really be anything that you're passionate about. So if it's just posting on Twitter, like you can do that.
Yeah, it's like you said, so many paths out there. Like we've seen photographers out there that made it just because they go around taking pictures of everything. There's coaches out there that work with amateur teams who then make it into the pro scene just because it was something that they did as a hobby, and they realized, hey, there's opportunities out there. And I personally feel like in the collegiate scene, at least, we're sitting on a bubble that's about to burst. We quickly went from, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, there was 5 collegiate teams. And now in a very short span, there's over 100 varsity programs.
Yeah, not even counting club teams.
Yeah, not counting club teams. There's, I don't know if TESPA is around numbers, but there's easily in the 4, maybe even 5 digits.
Yeah.
And if you include just teams that are out there playing. And there's going to be so many opportunities out there. Just find what you're passionate in and just ride it as long as you can.
Yeah, and I'm going to add, playing it is great if that's what your sole focus on, because you're going to be a pro esports player. Come up with a backup plan, because that's probably not going to happen. Hey, it's like students that are saying, they're going to be a pro football player no matter what. They play football at college, whether it's D1, 2, or 3, it doesn't matter. The chances of going pro are insignificant. And so having that backup plan about being able to understand the business side and how to actually run things, that's where the real value is. Playing it's great. If you're going to a school that has a collegiate esports team, go be passionate about it, put the hours in, but diversify yourself enough that you have something to fall back on when you graduate. Because just being able to play the game well doesn't translate to a lot of other jobs out there. Okay, but if you can run marketing campaigns, running events, anything else, that's what will translate to a lot of jobs, whether it's in esports or not, to be honest. So don't put all your eggs in one basket, because playing it's great, it's a lot of fun, enjoy it, do as best you can, but then have a backup plan for what you're going to do once you do actually walk across that stage and have to find a job, because playing it, that's not going to get you a lot of jobs by itself.
Right, and so what I sort of gained from coming down the line here, there are jobs out there. There are about to be a lot more jobs out there, right? In a couple years, we went from a handful to over 100 varsity programs, and however many now these student-run programs that are going to become varsity programs. So this is just at the collegiate level. These programs that need program directors or faculty members as this grows, or coaches, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things that if you're at the college, you're there to get experience. If it wasn't for the Penn State Esports Club, I wouldn't have found this job. I'd be in whatever mathematics job would be out there. That's the weird thing. It's one of those things where it's like, it was something for me that was weird, that mathematics was my backup. Yeah. And it was the major that I was going for. It was just something that, if you're passionate about it, go for it, because this is definitely a great time. 2018 and 2019 are going to be great years for esports, and even in the collegiate scene, there's just been so much improvement going on. But that even talks about, I don't know if you guys want to kind of touch amateur scene a bit, because there is opportunities out there for that. If you guys have any experience of just trying out your new things. No?
No, well, geez. Much more, we don't delve a lot into the amateur scene of things. We're focused on that collegiate side, and then working the business side after that. So not a lot of experience on the amateur side, way more just sticking to the collegiate, trying to, my head has been down right so far this year, trying to make sure this thing actually works and doesn't explode. And so, not a lot on the amateur scene, but I know that you two have more experience than we do looking at that side of things.
So specifically with the amateur scene, it's kind of similar, just like go out and just do those things. So I know specifically in the DC area, if you're into amateur esports, just go out to, I think it's in Fairfax, it's called The Cave. They have a lot of local events out there. Just try to find local events and then go to them. A lot of times you can just plug in whatever area that you're in and put the game that you like to play afterwards, and usually there is something out there. But I would definitely emphasize trying to go to some local events if you can. Because then you're able to talk with people. You can get better. You can start forming teams, and you can really start going out from there. And even if it's not local, there is a ton of different online leagues.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you want to be in tournament organizing, analytics, like we've talked about it a couple of times, there's a lot of amateur leagues out there, a lot of amateur teams trying to make it, and they need faculty. They need help. A lot of it is going to be volunteer work, but it's those resume builders for when these jobs do come into the market. The pro scene's been seeing it. They're like. Joey's talked about earlier with teams or businesses such as like Geico, HyperX. They're all looking for esports managers at this point. So there's so many opportunities that are going to be out there and are out there currently. I think we're reaching the halfway point right now, but we kind of want to open it up now. If an audience has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them at this point. Yeah,
So
go ahead.
I have kind of a specific question.
Sure.
I've actually been running my college's esports club for a while, and actually probably 6 or 7 years. I've been graduated for quite a while. I'm still kind of hanging around and help running it behind the scenes. And the college is starting to really like us, and they're also looking at creating their own esports program as well. Do you have any specific advice for that kind of a situation? I guess specifically for the guys who've been doing the collegiate stuff, because I've taken the initiative and I've talked to the athletics department there, who is going to be putting all that together, and even they seem like they're they're not really sure exactly what's going on. They're a little out of their depth, but at the same time, I don't know how to show them beyond what we're already doing that we know what we're doing and we have some knowledge base that can be helpful to them.
Sure. I mean, I can start with this, and Rudy, I know I'll have you chime in because you mentioned your athletic director, and I forget their title now, president of athletics. President,
yeah.
That was actually where your esports started or initiated, and at Shenandoah, that's totally not the case at all. When I met with our athletic director, she was actually against it. So where it's going to be housed is a big thing. So right now we're housed under student engagement. And are you under athletics?
We're under athletics.
So you're under athletics. So, and schools vary from school to school where esports is actually being housed. Some schools house it under academics, which is where we're going to move into next year, is under academics. So under our esports program, we'll have kind of the academic side as well as the competitive side. And schools do value the esports program because they see that the value it brings to students. It is being used as a recruitment tool in a lot of ways to bring students to a school because it's something else that students are interested in that can bring them to a school to help them get an education, is where they see it. So if you can show the value that it's bringing to the students, it doesn't matter what language you're speaking, because if those words ring true and you can sell that to president, upper administration, board of trustees, provost, whoever it might be, that's what they say, yes, we need this program, let's fund this program, let's see what we can do with this program. If you can show the value that it adds to students, current and potential students, that's where they'll understand that, yes, this is legitimate, we need this program, let's see what we can do. Okay, so that's a big one, is trying to sell that idea right there.
Yeah, and one thing that I found that works out very well is because a lot of these board members, they're clueless when it comes to these games. Try to find analogies that works for them. For example, whenever I would talk about the esports scene, they first thought, oh, well, Overwatch has 6 members, League of Legends has 5. All you need to do is get 6 players and you're done for everything. But I had to kind of explain to them, I was like, no, it's kind of like track and field, where you have your sprinters, you have your runners, you have your throwers. They all do specialize in certain things. So for me, that works well, is find the analogies that they know, and it's a lot easier to communicate with them. Because for me specifically, I didn't really have to do any pitching at my job. It was already going to happen. They just needed a director, and they hired me and just said, go. So it was easy for me. But me and Beal had a little bit of problems at Penn State where they were very hesitant with us. They didn't want to work with us, with the club there. But we were able to find, for example, the College of Communication wanted to work with us because they saw how in journalism and in casting, that was something that they could use, and we were actually able to create an event tied with them. So it's one of those things that it seems like, from what I could tell right now, that you're still having good communications, that you're at least getting your foot in the door, which is the hardest part. And now it's just making sure that you guys have the common footing and the understanding to move forward.
Right. And as a quick follow-up question, is there a way that you recommend to approach, like, for example, the board or somebody who's in charge? Because we've talked to the athletics department, but we haven't really been able to get in contact, or we haven't known the way to get in contact with, like, for example, the board or anyone else who's making decisions on that we would want to convince. Is there a way you would recommend, or a method you recommend that would be good for getting for starting talks like that, or would you ever do something with your intention?
The politics of college suck. It sucks sometimes trying to get your foot in the door and get in front of the right people, get your message in front of the right people. Be tenacious. Just be persistent. An email, and it doesn't have to be a long, elaborate email. A quick email. Provost presidents, athletic directors, they get 200 to 300 emails per day they have to answer. So they might just miss things sometimes, and some things just fall on the back burner. So be persistent. If you've been in contact with athletics already, get to that athletic director, whoever the highest person is in your athletics, because they have an ear directly with the president, who has the ear of the board of trustees. They're kind of that intermediary that can help you out and get to that level. And I guarantee you, they have meetings all the time. At least once a month, they have an academic cabinet or a university cabinet where they all get in one big room together, and they float around these ideas about what's going on at the university. And if you can get to the athletic director and say, hey, can you just mention this in this big meeting about esports are popular, we're running events, a lot of students are interested, that will start building the interest of those higher ups. And if that president realizes that, then she or he can go to that board of trustees or whatever board has that power, and that's how you kind of get in front of them. So you've got to use whoever you already have an ear with, talk with them, get them to relay your message. Maybe they want to bring you in so you relay your message yourself. It's however comfortable they feel talking about that. But it's just about being tenacious and getting them to understand your message so they can relay it up to the next step. It just takes time. It's just hard. There's no easy answer there at all.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much.
And actually, if you don't mind me adding one question on that, do you mind telling me what the school is? Like what school?
Anne Arundel Community College, actually.
So it's a community college. Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing they could talk about, because the school I come from, it's a small D2 school. We have, I think, just over 1,000 students total. And one thing that they really wanted to do was bring in numbers up for recruiting. And that's something you could even touch on, how you would be able to recruit students to your school to compete in the esports. So find what their objective might be and kind of tailor around that.
And that's a good thing too, because on top of it, as an esports club, we've also been doing the Extra Life charity stream
Nice.
per hour.
Good.
We're bringing in 40, 50 people on event for that twice a year. So that's something we could.
Oh, that's something that definitely.
Yeah.
To having a community outreach like that already and just being a club is something that a board would love to hear.
Yeah,
I feel like.
It'd be nice if we could do that too, guys. Yeah, it's a great thing to do at college, guys. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so it seems like your program, all of these programs are being coming into being in different ways, whether it's through President U or student passion projects or the athletic department, and they're working with organizations like NACE. If in the future the NCAA kind of steps in and takes this whole scene over, is that going to make it easier for these programs to show up? Is it going to make it harder? Is it just going to wreck everything? What's going to happen?
I personally feel like it's going to make it a lot harder. It's going to make my job 10 times harder than it already is, because right now the esports scene is like the Wild West, where anything really goes and anything really works. There's not a correct way and there's not a wrong way to do things. Once the NCAA gets their hands on things, it's kind of going to structure that in a way that I think hurts the players more than helps them. Because one thing that's big about esports scene is the amateurism of it, where when Heroes of the Dorm was still a thing, RIP, you could go win a tournament and have your entire college paid for. You can't do that for any other sport ever. So it was something where it helped out students immensely that there weren't these regulations put in place. And I personally hope the NCAA doesn't get involved in it. I don't think it's good for the scene, and I don't think we really need the structure that they provide just yet.
should there be an overarching sort of thing, or is it better for esports as a whole to remain the Wild West?
Well, so I think you're running into a little bit of what he says, but on top of that, like on the flip side, rather, if the NCAA would say, were to sanction esports in some capacity, I mean, there's a world of questions that raises with other athletics and money making and stuff like that. But I think that would then lend a lot of legitimacy to the world of esports. And then the board of directors is like, wait, esports is a thing with NCAA. We're an NCAA school. Should we be doing esports? And so like you sort of, I think it would make things much more complicated and much harder, as you're saying, but then would get these people who are completely ignorant of this world
would jump ahead,
to say, oh, okay, maybe this is something that we need to be doing.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, NCAA is National Collegiate Athletic Association, just so we're on the same page here. And they are a lot of times seen as a not so savory governing body in the world of collegiate sports. The biggest thing for me with esports is I think it's going to happen, whether it's now or 5 years from now, because there's a big announcement supposed to come out from the NCAA next week about esports. Whether that's going to be, yay, we're going to adopt it, no, we're not going to, or we just need more time to look at it. We don't know what that's going to be yet, but there are a lot of sessions at their national conference happening next week and there are rumblings from some people thinking that they're going to say, yes, we're going to now recognize esports as an NCAA sport. That's going to have a lot of implications.
Yeah, it's going to be huge.
For us at a Division III school, I kind of like it. We don't offer scholarships right now for esports anyway. At a D3 school for under athletics, guess what? No scholarships for athletics at a D3 school. So it kind of puts us at Shenandoah on a level playing field with other Division III schools. The biggest issue for me with the NCAA is that students that play esports wouldn't be able to make money on Twitch anymore.
That's huge.
And that's the biggest one to me, because students under the NCAA, student athletes under the NCAA cannot profit off their name, image, or likeness in the activity for which they participate in NCAA. So there was a college kicker at University of South Florida, I believe, putting YouTube videos up on YouTube, obviously, and was making money off of this and getting recognition for this. And he was, told he can't do that. That's a no-no according to the NCAA. That's awfully similar to what Twitch is, where you can get on there and that is you on Twitch and you're playing a game using your name, your image, and you're making money off of it a lot of times. And that is an absolute no-no. You'll be suspended very quickly for doing that. So the NCAA is going to have to change that rule right there, because if they tell students that, yeah, you can play esports in college, but you can't be on Twitch anymore, that's not going to fly.
No, never.
I mean, think about how many students that play esports, especially at the college level, high school level, any of them, how many are on Twitch? It's almost 90 to 95% of them. I mean, and so if you tell them they can't do that, they're going to be like, well, screw you. I'll just go be on Twitch, make my money, play in my amateur tournaments, and I'll go to college and get my degree and graduate and be done with it. I won't play on your NCAA varsity level collegiate esports team because I want to make money doing what I'm doing. Go play in my tournaments where I can make some money. NCAA, you can't do that. So there's pros and cons to it. I can see some pros, but I can certainly see some issues that are definitely going to happen, and it's going to be difficult no matter what, if they do it or not. Provides lots of legitimacy, puts it on TV. People are like, okay, it's a sport. NCAA recognizes it. Esports definitely a sport. Woohoo! But I think that it's going to be rough for about 5 years, and then things will calm down, and we'll get in the rhythm and routine, and things will work themselves out. But it'll definitely be a bumpy ride to start. There's no question.
And one thing that makes it really complicated, it's like there's sports that NCAA does, is like no one owns basketball, no one owns baseball. Well, Riot owns League of Legends, Blizzard owns Overwatch. They could just say at any point, hey, NCAA, you can't use our game.
Yep.
Like you can't do tournaments anymore. They have the legal right to do that. And that's one thing I think that NCAA is why they're so hesitant.
Yeah.
And we actually are seeing that with problems in conferences, or not conferences, but overarching bodies that are trying right now, is that they're getting pushback from the developers, because these developers have their own leagues that they're running and they don't want competition. So it's one of those things where we might not see a governing body because they just, I guess, don't have the options. They don't have any power.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, yeah, the third-party governing bodies don't have the power that, like you said, Blizzard and Riot have in these games. And so, to go back to your question, do we want to see it that way? Well, esports in and of itself is like an umbrella term, where these games are like different sports, kind of like you're saying track and field. There needs to be a different governing body for Overwatch, for League of Legends, for blah, 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 for blah, blah, blah. And we kind of have that already. So if we get a third party that comes in and tries to do this, they have to have an agreement with those developers or publishers saying, we can use your product in our tournaments for the next 5 years, and NCAA is paying them, whatever X amount of dollars for the rights to use that. There's got to be some kind of agreement in place to do that in order for the NCAA to take over, because you're exactly right. They don't own the rights to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to look like logistically extremely weird, because if they're going to have this over a long period of time, games come and go too. Mm-hmm. So obviously you have to get deals with individual games, and you might have a game that starts off, exploding really good, aka something like StarCraft 2, and maybe you get a 10-year deal with it, because that seems like something NCAA would do, because they don't really recognize some games come and go like that. And then year 3 or 4 comes around, then the game dies. And then where do you go from there? What if League of Legends at the time was, it was becoming really popular, becoming one of the biggest esports? Well, what if you have one of the biggest esports outside the collegiate scene, and in the collegiate scene you only have kind of like the games that no one plays anymore? Mm-hmm. So logistically, it is going to look extremely weird, I think.
Yeah. Question?
But don't you think there are staple games that remain popular no matter what, like Super Smash Bros. That's always going to be around.
Mm-hmm.
It's gained enough of a supremacy that it's going to be around for a long, long time. It's just a matter of where the game stands in the community, and if it's built up a high enough base to remain on top.
Yeah, that's the thing with esports, is that there's some games out there that have stood the test of time. Counter-Strike's been around since the 90s and is still going pretty strong. But you have games that come in and maybe 6 months down the line, the esports scene is dead. You have other games like League of Legends that's been going strong for 8 years now. I don't see it slowing down at any point, but you never know when it just happens. The community has to stick around, and in the world of video games, stuff changes in the matter of weeks, and it's very hard to predict this kind of stuff. I do think there are going to be those staples, but I think it's going to be more of, there'll always be at least a very popular fighting game. Which one it's going to be, who knows? Because we were even just talking beforehand how Street Fighter has been falling out a little bit. It's been the biggest fighting game for how many years now? And it's starting to fall behind. Smash is always going to be big, but what's going to beat that out? Brawlhalla almost did, I feel like, for a little bit there, but Smash is always going to have its community that will always stick behind it. So you'll always have those small communities, but I don't think the NCAA only wants to be with an esport that's surviving. They want to be with an esport that's thriving. And when you have to do those 5-10-year deals, it's kind of hard to predict what is going to thrive, what is going to be the next League of Legends, the next Overwatch. Because what if Riot, for some reason, they put an S in games and decide to create a shooter and they kill Overwatch as well? Stuff like that could just happen out of nowhere.
Right. And the NCAA is a behemoth that takes years to change directions, right? And that is not at all what the world of esports is like. And if the NCAA is going to do this, they would conceivably want to be on what is new and exciting and is going to bring in the most money for them, but they can't move that quickly, I would imagine. By the time a game is that large, well, then there are all these other governing bodies or amateur tournaments or whatever that have already got control of the scene, and then the NCAA comes in and says, well, yeah, we want to do this. Well, and the players, we like what we have. We like doing it the way we do it.
Yeah, it's taking the NCAA almost 2 years just to make a statement on esports, let alone change anything. Any other questions? Yeah, sure.
I guess with that in mind, and you guys are talking about the umbrella of esports, developing programs, is there a specific maybe game or genre in your personal or professional opinion to go after? Should you seek after an Overwatch that's catching a lot of attention, but it has a real hard time following? To like if you're just jumping in, should I, knowing what's going on, versus CS:GO, which has that more cult following, but it's real simple, people can understand, I kill this guy, I win, kind of thing. Is there any sort of insight or advice that way to maybe pursue basketball instead of football, kind of starting off, or?
My personal opinion would be whatever you're passionate about. Because if you're passionate about CS:GO and not so passionate about Overwatch, but just want to go with Overwatch because it's more popular, there's going to be people who, let's say you're a tournament organizer, people who are going to be better than you because they know the game inside and out. But if you know CS:GO inside and out and people are looking for a CS:GO player or whatever you're going to be working on, then you have that specialization already. And you're going to be a lot better at CS:GO than you would be at Overwatch because that's the game that you enjoy, that you play. For me personally, I do coach all 3 of my teams, but I make sure that I get outside coaches for Overwatch because that is the game that I'm not as passionate about. I play a lot of Hearthstone, I play a lot of League of Legends, but I just don't play Overwatch. And I realized that I'm not going to be a good coach for them. So instead of trying to spread myself thin between all 3 games, I realized this and made sure that I got outside help to specialize in Overwatch because I wasn't passionate about it. I learned enough that I could have conversations with them, point a few things out, but it's never going to be the point that I'm going to be a really good coach for them just because it's not what I'm passionate for.
I think one thing that you might have been hitting at too, like hitting at maybe watchability, is that sort of what you're pushing out a little bit too? So like, yeah, even as an Overwatch player, Overwatch can be very hard to watch for somebody, you know, they're changing players all the time. And so like, you know, Blizzard has come out with the new, I'm losing the name of it, but the viewer, right? The spectator mode. How does that work for TV, right? That doesn't. Like that's a control thing. You control it on your own, on your PC at home or whatever, and so that becomes much more watchable. But yeah, video games, for watchability wise, is difficult. So the audience is going to have to learn how to watch this because someone coming in has never watched football before. That's confusing. But then also the community, the broadcasters, the streamers, whatever, they need to learn how to like make this more watchable for. I mean, if it's difficult for somebody who plays Overwatch to watch Overwatch, right? Like, there's no way that my dad is going to sit down and watch it.
Which, hey, there's also another job out there, being an in-game camera operator. I have a friend who works at Blizzard as an in-game camera operator for Overwatch, which, if you told me just a year ago that would have been a job, I wouldn't have believed you.
Right. Another one back here.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they do because on Disney XD they are showing Overwatch like World Cup, and they're showing tournaments on live TV on Disney XD at least. But you know, it is so hard to watch. You're right. Just trying to keep up with everything is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And if you're somebody who doesn't know what's going on in the game, I can't imagine sitting down and trying to watch.
But the fact that it's on means somebody's watching it, right? Like there are viewers. So.
Yeah,
there are viewers,
and it's been on ESPN as well. I mean, it's been on some major networks before. Turner is going crazy. E-League is all over Turner, of course, because they work together. But it's this idea of painless viewing. You know, you've got to have the casters have to break down the action. Replays are extremely important in traditional sports, in football, because football does happen pretty fast. And you're like, what happened? How'd that guy run for 82 yards there? I didn't see that block. They'll break that down. So they need people to be able to break down plays that are happening. Overwatch was great because they started color coordinating all the actions that were happening on the screen, so you could tell which team was doing what action on the screen. So that helped a little bit too. It's getting there. Esports, I mean, Overwatch is what, 2.5 years old at this point? And so it's still very new for how the best way to do this is camera operators, and that all these production teams are going into these to get the mass appeal. It's all so new. They're taking ideas from sports, but not all ideas that occurred in traditional sports work in esports. It's a different animal. So they're taking some ideas, but they're still learning what the best practices are for production value, for painless viewing, for the mass audience to come in. And even on cable, that's kind of a foreign concept because most people that watch esports and pay attention to it don't even have cable. So they're streaming it instead. They're watching online. They're watching through Twitch. Most people above the age of 40 probably don't know what Twitch even is. And so there's all this, it's the Wild West. It's still the Wild West. And it's such a young thing that we're still trying to learn where things go and how to do things. It's not great. It's not even good right now watching Overwatch. You know, something like League of Legends, these MOBAs that have that top-down view, by nature of the beast, it's easier to watch because you can understand it a lot easier, see kind of an overall action. Rocket League is very easy for some people to watch because it's soccer with cars, so it's easy to understand. But Overwatch is mass chaos when you're trying to watch it. And so it does come, different games have different production values in that regard, in different styles of games. And if you look at something like the Olympics, and they've looked at adopting esports, is it going to happen? Are they ever going to have it? Yes, they're going to. Whether it's not going to be in Tokyo in 2020, maybe in Paris in 2024. I think by 2028 in LA, yes, they're going to have some version of esports in the Olympics. And I think it's going to be something like Rocket League, because it's non-violent and it's easy to understand for the mass audience. And so I think and certainly something new could come along. I mean, that's 9 years away now, it's 2019. So that's a long ways away right now. But it'll be a game that is non-violent, that is easy for people to pick up. Somebody that doesn't know what esports is, there's no idea. But if you're playing soccer with cars, people know, oh, you scored more goals, you won that match. That's easy to understand. So we're getting there. It's just taking a lot of time to get to the best practices in it.
Sure thing.
Are you guys aware of what happened with Dragon Ball Z Fighters and that scenario? Or that for the FGC fans, what had its major tournament scene still kind of does. And then lately, some of the major ones, like even Japan, were basically told, you can't run this anymore. And some other organizations were told, you can't run this. And, you know, it's not the main company, Bandai Namco, that's shutting this down, but nobody's officially come out with a statement yet as to what's really happened. But there's some speculation that maybe Toei Anime, or whatever they're called, basically saying you can't broadcast our game anymore. Kind of what similarly happened with Smash Brothers 5 years ago when they tried to run it at EVO, and Nintendo stepped in and then faced this huge backlash saying, what are you guys doing? I didn't know if you guys had any thoughts on it.
Dylan, that might be your expertise there.
I know exactly what's going on. So the issues with that is actually with a lot of Japanese developers. So unfortunately, Japanese developers don't quite have the keen insight on esports that a lot of Western developers like Riot and Blizzard do. This is something very, very new for them, and Smash definitely learned it the hard way, because like when Brawl came out, they were like, we don't want people playing this competitively. Let's just put in tripping, because this is a party game, not a fight like a fighting game. And unfortunately, there was a huge backlash with that. And then Nintendo is starting to learn with that, and they're definitely learning with Smash, and even like a lot of their other games. They're like, oh, this is esports ready. We can put these for esports. But a lot of other Japanese developers they don't have that insight, and they want a lot of control. And I think that's what's going on with Dragon Ball FighterZ right now, is they want complete control over all their tournaments, and if their brand is out there, they want to have control over it so it's represented correctly. And it's not coming from a terrible place, but it's definitely not the correct move. Hopefully, they're getting a lot of backlash, so they'll ease up on that a little bit.
Yeah, as someone who doesn't watch fighting game tournaments too often, I usually just watch EVO, but Dragon Ball Z FighterZ is one of the funnest tournaments to watch. Yeah. Hearing the crowd go Super Saiyan whenever a character does is one of the craziest things ever. You hear the Yamcha Wolves whenever he gets his Spirit Bomb. It's something that you don't see too often in other fighting games. Yeah. Kind of like Smash 4 kind of had a big backlash at this last EVO as well, but that was kind of more of tournament organizing than the game itself. But yeah, I really hope to see Dragon Ball Z a lot more tournaments, and that's something that you'll see sometimes, is that the developers are very stingy with the rights to publicize their game. I know you had a question? Yeah.
At my college, our esports group is still pretty small. I think we only have 2 organized teams, which is Overwatch and Rocket League, I think. And I'm trying to start one for R6 Siege. And it's still small. What would be ways to help grow the esports thing and possibly show it to the board of directors at some point?
So one thing I could tell you how we did at Penn State is we started small as well. Our esports team actually just started as just a League of Legends team. Started as maybe 8 of us in a room. Then we found out friends who played League. They added them in. Didn't really matter of their skill level. We just kept adding more and more players. Found out that they played other games as well, and that's when we started to branch off in other games. But it's just one of the things I could say is those players are going to be out there somewhere at your campus, especially if your campus is big enough. They will be there. It's just trying to find them. And that's where you have to be very involved in when it comes to involvement fairs. Like we found Dylan through an involvement fair. And it's just try and get your word out as much as possible. Be active on social medias to try to get any sort of news out that, hey, we have an esports team on campus and we're looking for Rainbow Six Siege players. Because once you have a team, it's a lot easier to show, to broadcast, hey, here's our team, this is how we're competing, this is how well we've been doing. Then they're going to be more likely to take you guys a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I was never a student on a campus that had popular esports like this, but word of mouth is extremely powerful. So if you can get just people to spread the word about you're trying to start a Rainbow Six Siege team, and that you have an esports program or an esports team is one thing, because most people don't even realize you have that. And so doing things like posters and flyers, things like that, students don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. If it's something like the school newspaper, they probably don't see that either. Social media is fantastic. I think that's a really good way. Word of mouth from student to student, just kind of letting it spread like wildfire is a really powerful way to do it as well. Doing things at different kind of fairs, that's a great thing to do, but just keeping do it as much as you can to publicize it is all you can do, and trying to reach as many people, and you just have to keep at it, because sometimes it just takes time for it to catch root and then spread. So you just got to keep at it and keep putting the word out there that this is what you're doing and this is what you're recruiting for, and run an event, run a tournament. Maybe people will pay attention to that, even if it's not Rainbow Six Siege, but then you can start advertising the program and that you want to start that team. So run an event and run Fortnite tournament. Everybody will come to a Fortnite tournament because it's Fortnite. And so if you run something like that just gets people in the door, then you have their ears, and then you can start telling them about this other program and this other team you're trying to start.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just, if you walk down from class to class, say someone's wearing a Cloud9 jersey and you know that they're not part of the club, just go out and reach them like, hey, what games do you play? You see someone with a Chonka shirt on, hey, be like, hey, you play? You should join our team. We're looking for some teammates. So there's a lot of different ways to bring people in, even if it's just, like you said, word of mouth is the greatest way. Just start talking to people, and if you find out they play, just try to bring them in. That's the easiest way to grow a club.
Yeah, and so something that you can put right into practice, if your club has shirts, wear your shirt all the time. Whenever you go to class for the first time, a lot of times people are like, introduce yourself, tell us who you are. Just be that guy. Like, I was definitely that whenever I was in a new class. They go, oh, like, everyone introduce yourselves. I would stand up, I go, my name is Dylan Beal. I run the Penn State eSports Club. I love League of Legends and StarCraft. And then, yeah, 90% of people are like, what is this guy doing? But like, there is that group of people who will come up and be like, oh, I also like League of Legends, or I like this game. And that's just how you get people. You just got to just put your name out there as much as you can.
I think we have time for maybe one more question then. Up front.
I don't know how last one, if anybody else wants it, but so I don't know if maybe it's the right question to ask, but so you guys are feeling what happened to Here's the Storm recently, the cancellation of the esports team. Since then, I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with like the community stuff, but since then a lot of the community and community organizations have been banding together to try to get like community, grassroots esports teams going for the game. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on that, and if that's a worthwhile venture that maybe a college club would consider, getting in on and competing with, knowing that the game might not survive even with community efforts, and also, like, would it still be valuable even if the game doesn't survive, just to be able to have the experience and say, hey, this wasn't like the highest end of competition, but we got teams together and we did this, or we had casters that could cast this game and did really well, and they could pivot to other games. Would that be something worth pursuing in your opinion?
I think so. If there's interest on your campus already and for being a club, bring them in. It doesn't hurt to play for, even if it's just one last semester. That's actually one thing I'm kind of mad at Blizzard for not doing. Like the professional casters, I felt like they deserved one last tournament, like one last hurrah, that they could send the game off well, not just hear about it in a blog post. Blizzard disappointed me. I got very angry at them when I heard about that. It was kind of the writing on the wall. I understood that the scene was going to die, but just the way they did it is not right. But if there's these community tournaments out there and you have people on campus that want to play, it's a great way to get experience, even if the game's going to die. Because even if Heroes of the Storm is no longer there, if you could say like, hey, we compete in these tournaments, I casted in this, but now I transitioned to, let's say, another MOBA, there's at least that experience that you can't take away. It's maybe not in the same game, but it's still quality experience.
And since you mentioned the casters too, getting kind of, I guess the casters specifically kind of getting axed without really being told a lot. I don't know if anybody else is here as a Storm fan, but a couple of the big casters, Caliber, Trixler, are actually going to be still casting for the community scene for stuff that's going on. So if anybody's fans of those guys, fans of the Heroes of the Storm esports scene, check out the Heroes. I'm not affiliated with them anyway. The Heroes Heard. No, I'm sorry. Heroes Lounge Division S, I believe it is.
Heroes Lounge. I'll have to look that up.
A lot of the big talent from the casting side. Tetcher's there. Valganier is a big French language caster. A lot of guys doing stuff for that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I love about the esports scene, is that we're a giant community. Like, even though my main game is League of Legends, I still pay attention to all the other esports just because I love the community aspect of it. I like I grew up watching all kinds of sports, like Joey kind of said earlier. Played video games and played sports. This is the perfect combination of it, and just being able to branch out to all the different communities and just seeing how it goes is a fantastic experience. I don't know if you guys have any closing remarks. We're kind of closing in at our time, but I know, Joey, you do have a panel tomorrow. If you want to quickly just shout that out.
Yeah, sure. And so yeah, Joel will be on there, Rudy, you'll be on there. So tomorrow the panel 8:30, talking about esports and education. So a lot of similar topics that we talked about here, as well as also kind of delving into more the academic side of esports and what the value is of a college degree in esports. And then on Sunday, there's a couple more panels on esports. I know this panel will be again on Sunday at 11:30.
11:30, yep. And we're going to be bringing somebody from the club from University of Maryland. So it's going to be a lot about the student organization of it. I know we kind of did both student org and varsity here, but the one is going to be mostly students on Sunday. So it's going to be a really good thing if you're looking to get your feet wet in the collegiate scene.
Yeah, so lots of esports stuff still to come at MAGFest. So yeah, check out all the esports panels and stuff we got going on.
Yep, and we'll be sticking around for a while if you guys do want to talk to us as well. But thanks for everybody coming to the panel. Thanks for everybody for being on it. And yeah, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.